Hey everyone, I'm Heather Wilson. I'm 29, a nurse here in Seattle, and I thought I had a pretty normal, quiet life until one phone call flipped my world upside down. Miss Wilson, you're 3 months behind on your mortgage payments, the man on the other end of the line said in a calm, professional tone. I blinked, confused. What mortgage? I asked, honestly baffled. I didn't own a house. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment in Ballard. Mortgage. That didn't make any sense. The property on Highland Drive, he continued. Loan amount $623,000. My stomach dropped. Highland Drive. That's my sister Amanda's new address. I rushed home after work, completely rattled. I'm a pediatric nurse. I've handled cardiac arrests, screaming parents, and dying children, but nothing had ever made me shake like this. That night, I sat at my kitchen table clutching a manila folder from the bank, one that held paperwork I never signed, and an address I'd visited just months ago for Amanda's housewarming party. And inside my bag, folded neatly, was the police report that would change my life and my family forever. If you're watching this from anywhere in the world, drop your location in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe. Because tonight, I'm going to tell you the story of how I discovered the person who betrayed me wasn't a stranger. It was my sister. Sarah. Life before the betrayal. It was calm, predictable. I worked at Seattle Grace Hospital for 6 years, mostly in the pediatric ward. There's something deeply fulfilling about helping kids even when the days are tough. My coworkers were like my second family. I was always the one picking up extra shifts, staying late when no one else could, bringing in snacks on birthdays. Outside of work, my world was quiet. I lived alone, surrounded by secondhand furniture and more plants than any one-bedroom apartment could reasonably hold. My friends used to joke my apartment looked like a jungle, but I loved it. It gave me peace after long shifts. My parents, David and Carol Wilson, still lived in the same house where Amanda and I grew up. Dad retired from accounting 2 years ago, and Mom still teaches 4th grade, though she insists she'll stop when kids stop being interesting, which probably means never. And Amanda, my older sister, by 3 years. Growing up, I idolized her. She was the classic golden girl, homecoming queen, debate team captain valedictorian, confident, radiant, fearless. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the girl who didn't speak up until college. But we were close. Or, I thought we were. As adults, we stayed in touch, coffee dates, regular family dinners. Amanda had gone into real estate, carving out a successful niche, selling luxury homes in Seattle. She married Brian Parker, a financial advisor. Picture perfect couple. Their Instagram looked like an advertisement for success. Sunset cocktails, black tie galas, destination getaways. Me, I was single, career focused, and occasionally subjected to horrible blind dates my coworkers set me up on. Our lives were different, but I never thought there was jealousy or resentment between us. Amanda could be snarky sometimes, little digs about my small apartment or my financial underachievement, but I always brushed it off. I thought she meant well. About 8 months ago, Amanda and Brian moved into a stunning home on Queen Anne Hill. The kind of place you see in magazines. They hosted a housewarming party, and I remember walking through the place in awe. Everything was custom. Every fixture screamed designer label. Amanda gave me the tour, her voice full of pride. Someday, you'll have this too. Sis, she said, squeezing my shoulder. You just need to aim higher. I remember smiling politely, even though something about that comment stung a little. Fast forward to the Tuesday that changed everything. I was midway through a shift changing bandages for a sweet 7-year-old boy named Tyler. My phone buzzed. Normally, I wouldn't answer, during patient care, but I'd been waiting on news about my elderly neighbor who had been hospitalized the night before. "Hello, this is Heather," I said, stepping out into the hallway. "Miss Wilson, this is Craig Donovan from Washington Mutual. I'm calling about your missed mortgage payments." Confused, I replied, "I don't have a mortgage. I rent." He was silent for a beat before saying, "According to our records, you took out a mortgage for $623,000 in January for a home on Highland Drive. You made 3 payments, but nothing since April." Highland Drive, Amanda's street. I started to shake. "That's not possible. I've never owned property. I'm a nurse, not a surgeon. My income couldn't qualify me for that kind of loan." "We have your signature on the documents," he said. "The loan application, income verification, credit check, all of it." That afternoon, I sat in the bank branch with the manager, Richard Peterson, who laid out the paperwork. And there it was, pages of official documents all bearing my name and signature, except I hadn't signed any of them. And the address on the mortgage, 4872 Highland Drive, Amanda's house. I stared at the documents numb. "Can I have copies of these?" I asked. Richard hesitated, then nodded. "Given the circumstances, yes. But if you didn't apply for this mortgage, Miss Wilson, I highly suggest you contact the police. This isn't just identity theft. It's mortgage fraud." I nodded, but I already knew. This wasn't just some random criminal who got a hold of my information. This was personal. This was Amanda, my sister, my role model, the person I thought would always have my back. When I got home that night, I pulled the blind shut, locked the door, and spread the documents across my tiny kitchen table. I stared at my signature, the perfectly forged curves and loops, the numbers, the loan balances, the debts I never asked for. That night, sleep never came. Just questions, rage, grief, and the one thing I never expected to feel from someone I loved: betrayal. Part 2. The evidence piles up. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 2 years. I couldn't face the pediatric ward, couldn't pretend to be okay. My mind was spinning. My body ached from stress, and every time I looked at those forged mortgage documents, my stomach twisted. My apartment, once my safe space, felt suffocating. I paced for hours, replaying every interaction with Amanda over the past year. Could this really be a mistake? Maybe a paperwork mix-up? Maybe she had used my name accidentally on some form and things had spiraled. But that hope faded the longer I stared at the documents. Whoever filled out those forms knew my social security number, my date of birth, my exact job title, and employer. They didn't guess they knew. Only someone close to me could have done this, only Amanda. Still, I needed more than just my gut feeling. So I started making calls. First up, Equifax. I told the woman on the phone that I suspected identity theft. She started with a bored tone, reading from a script, but when I explained the mortgage situation, her voice changed. "Let me pull up your credit report." "Miss Wilson," she said, fingers clicking away on a keyboard. Then she paused. I'm seeing several recent accounts in your name. The mortgage is the largest, but also a $150,000 home equity line of credit. 3 credit cards, a personal loan, all opened within the last year." I felt sick. "I didn't open any of them," I said firmly. "I understand. I'm placing a fraud alert on your file immediately. I'll also send you instructions for disputing each account. You'll need to contact Experian and TransUnion as well." That day became a blur of phone calls and heartbreak. By sunset, I had fraud alerts on all 3 major credit bureaus, and I'd learned that my once solid 724 credit score had plummeted to 546. Not because of anything I did, but because someone else had maxed out credit lines in my name. That night, I barely slept again. I kept my phone on the pillow, clutching it like a life raft. I couldn't talk to Amanda. Not yet. I needed something more solid than gut instinct. So, the next morning, I met with a financial advisor, Diane Schwartz, recommended by a colleague. Her office was quiet, full of books and soft lighting. But even that warm space couldn't ease the tension coiled in my stomach. I slid the bank documents across the desk. She read in silence for a few minutes, her expression darkening. "This is definitely identity theft," she said finally. "And a sophisticated case. Whoever did this wasn't guessing. They had precise information data only someone close to you would know." I swallowed hard. "It was my sister," I said quietly. "Amanda. She's the one living in that house." Diane blinked. "That complicates things. Family fraud is emotionally devastating and harder to prosecute. Are you prepared to go to the police?" I hesitated. Even now, even with all the evidence piling up, part of me still couldn't process that Amanda would do this to me. My sister, my protector, my best friend, when we were kids. But I wasn't imagining it, and Amanda wasn't coming forward to explain herself. "I need more proof," I said. "Before I go to the police, I want to be absolutely sure." Okay. That afternoon, I hired a handwriting analyst named Marcus Bell. He examined the forged mortgage forms and compared them with my real signature from my passport, nursing license, and hospital ID. "These are definitely forgeries," Marcus said, after an hour of meticulous analysis. "Good ones, but still forged. See here the pressure changes, the hesitation in the loops. The forger was trying to mimic your style, not writing naturally." "Could you testify to that if needed?" I asked. He nodded. "Absolutely." The case was coming together, but I still needed to understand why. Why would Amanda, someone who appeared to have it all, do something like this? So I started asking questions. I didn't confront Amanda. Not yet. Instead, I talked to people around her. Casual chats, subtle questions. I pieced together a picture that was very different from what she posted on social media. Apparently, Amanda and Brian had been struggling financially for years. The real estate market downturn hit her business hard. Brian had left his old firm under shady circumstances. Rumors were he'd been involved in a compliance scandal, though no one knew details. Their lifestyle, however, hadn't changed. If anything, it had gotten flashier. A new boat, a luxury SUV, private school for the kids, a membership at an exclusive country club. But then came the most damning detail, one that shook me to my core. My friend Stephanie worked at a luxury car dealership. Over coffee one afternoon, she leaned in and said, "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Amanda came in a few months ago to buy a Mercedes. When they ran her credit, it was a mess. Brian ended up paying cash, but I overheard them arguing outside. He said something like, 'We can't keep doing this.' The house was already risky enough." The house. My house, at least according to the bank. That same day, I went back through my emails and online accounts. I discovered several credit card accounts that had been opened using a slight variation of my actual email address. Instead of heatherwilson1993@gmail.com, they were listed under heatherwilson883@gmail.com. Easy to miss, clearly deliberate. Each new discovery was like another knife to the chest. My sister, someone I trusted more than almost anyone, had not only stolen my identity, but planned to ruin my financial future. And worst of all, she didn't even tell me. She just smiled at family dinners, gave me hugs, told me I needed to aim higher, when in reality, she was destroying everything I'd worked for behind my back. A week later, I couldn't delay it any longer. I drove to the Seattle Police Department and walked into the Financial Crimes Unit, clutching the folder of evidence like a shield. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered. A tired-looking detective in her 40s, Rachel Thompson, called me back after nearly an hour of waiting. She led me to a small interview room with a plain table, 3 chairs, and a wall-mounted camera in the corner. Standard procedure, she said. Protects both of us. She sat down and looked me in the eye. I understand you're here to report identity theft. Yes, I said, my voice quieter than I expected. By my sister. Something flickered across Detective Thompson's face. Maybe surprise, maybe recognition. But she kept her tone neutral. I see. Unfortunately, that's more common than you might think. Start from the beginning. Tell me everything. And I did. From the moment the bank called me, to the forged documents, to the IP address that traced the mortgage back to Amanda's old condo. I told her everything. Part 3, filing the report. For the next 2 hours, I poured out everything I had to Detective Rachel Thompson. I started with the phone call from the bank. The surreal moment I learned I was 3 months behind on a mortgage I never signed. Then the forged documents, the shocking discovery that my sister's dream home was bought with a loan in my name. Detective Thompson took notes occasionally, stopping me to ask specific questions. How would your sister have had access to your personal details, social security, birth date, employment, history? She's been to my apartment dozens of times, I admitted. I keep my important documents in an unlocked cabinet in my home office. It's never even occurred to me to lock them up. I never thought I needed to protect myself from my own family. Her expression softened just slightly. No one expects this from family. It's not your fault. I nodded, but it felt like my fault. I felt naive, stupid. After I finished my story, she closed her notebook and leaned back in her chair. Miss Wilson, I want to be very clear about what comes next. If you file this report, we will open an investigation. If the evidence points to your sister, and possibly her husband, they could face serious criminal charges. Identity theft, mortgage fraud conspiracy. These are felony offenses. That could mean prison time. Are you prepared for that? I hadn't let myself think that far ahead. But now, the weight of it hit me like a wave. I thought about Amanda's 2 children, my niece and nephew. About my parents, who would be devastated. About holidays and birthdays and everything that might never feel the same again. But then I thought about my destroyed credit, the debts I never asked for, the violation, the betrayal. Amanda had already changed everything. I was just catching up to the reality she created. Yes, I said, finally, my voice shaking. I need to protect myself. If she faces consequences, that's her responsibility, not mine. Detective Thompson nodded. Understood. We'll conduct this investigation discreetly, but I can't promise confidentiality. If charges are filed, they'll become public record. I understand, I said quietly. She slid a form across the table toward me. This is the official identity theft report. Read it carefully before you sign. I picked up the pen and stared down at the paper for a long moment. And then I signed it. My real signature. Not the forgery Amanda had used to steal my future. The wheels of justice were in motion, and there was no turning back. So Stephanie was waiting for me in the lobby. I had texted her earlier, asking her to come. Just seeing her familiar face brought a rush of emotion I didn't expect. She pulled me into a hug the second I stepped through the doors. How'd it go? She asked softly. I gave a dry laugh. About as well as accusing your sister of felony fraud can go. She squeezed my arm. You did the right thing, Heather. What she did is beyond wrong. And you're stronger than she ever gave you credit for. We found a quiet coffee shop nearby, and I told her everything. The detective's questions. The moment I signed the report. The numbness I couldn't shake. They'll start investigating right away, I said, stirring my untouched coffee. They'll contact the bank, subpoena records, maybe even interview Amanda. Stephanie's brows lifted. How do you think she'll react? She'll deny it at first, I said. Then she'll try to spin it. Say it was a misunderstanding, or she had plans to fix it all. Stephanie leaned forward. Do you think she really planned to fix it? I considered that. Maybe in some version of her mind, she believed it was temporary. But practically, the facts didn't lie. She and Brian were already missing payments. They'd opened credit cards, maxed them out, and hadn't paid a dime since. No, I said finally. They never had a plan, just desperation dressed up in designer clothes. So, 2 days later, Detective Thompson called with her first update. We've confirmed your suspicions, Miss Wilson. The mortgage application was submitted online from an IP address registered to your sister's old condo. We also discovered evidence that her husband Brian may be involved. Financial crimes like this rarely happen in isolation. Brian. I hadn't even really considered him yet. But of course, as a financial advisor, he would have known exactly how to manipulate the process. There's more, she continued. Search history on their home computer included inquiries about bankruptcy laws and identity abandonment. It appears they were planning to declare bankruptcy in your name once the debts became overwhelming. The blood drained from my face. This wasn't desperation. This was strategy. Amanda and Brian had carefully crafted a plan to wreck my finances and walk away clean. It was never going to be temporary. They were going to burn my life to the ground and leave me in the ashes. A week later, the official police report arrived in the mail. I sat on my couch, my hands trembling as I opened the envelope. Inside was a comprehensive document, dozens of pages of forensic-level evidence. Bank transfers, mortgage documents, credit card applications, IP trace logs, all of it pointing directly to Amanda and Brian. There was no wiggle room, no misunderstanding, no way out. The district attorney, according to Detective Thompson, was confident. The case was airtight. Charges were coming. Tomorrow was our bi-weekly family dinner. Amanda would be there, still thinking she'd gotten away with it, still smiling, still playing the part of the successful big sister. She didn't know I'd already filed the report. She didn't know the police had the evidence. She didn't know that I had spent the past 2 weeks preparing for the confrontation that would blow the lid off everything. That night, as I got ready for bed, my phone chimed. It was a text from my mom. Mom, can't wait to see my girls tomorrow night. I'm making your favorite lasagna. Love you both. The normalcy of that message, so casual, so warm, hit me like a punch to the chest. I cried for the first time since this nightmare began, not just for myself, but for my family, for the parents who would wake up tomorrow morning thinking everything was fine, and go to bed knowing their oldest daughter might go to prison. In the morning, I stood in front of my closet for nearly an hour trying to decide what to wear. It felt absurd, like I was getting ready for court instead of dinner. But somehow, it mattered. I chose a navy blue dress. Professional. Composed. Nothing too dramatic. Just enough to remind Amanda and myself that I wasn't here to play games. I carefully tucked the manila folder into my bag and zipped it shut. This wasn't going to be a shouting match. I wasn't going to scream or accuse. I would simply present the truth and let it speak for itself. Part 4. The dinner that changed everything. I drove to my parents' house in Bellevue that evening, like I'd done 100 times before. But tonight, everything felt different. I parked a block away, just to give myself a few moments to breathe, to calm my nerves, to steady the pounding in my chest. As I walked up the familiar path to their front door, the scent of Mom's lasagna wafted into the air, warm, rich, nostalgic. For a moment, I was 10 again, running up those same steps after school. But that warmth vanished as soon as I spotted Amanda's white Range Rover in the driveway. The same one she'd flaunted just a few months ago. The same one I now suspected was purchased with credit she stole using my name. I paused at the door, my hand hovering over the doorbell. For a split second, I considered turning around, skipping the confrontation, giving Amanda one last chance to confess. But then I remembered the foreclosure notice in my name, the bankruptcy searches, The look on Stephanie's face when she told me Amanda and Brian were arguing about the house being risky. No, there was no excuse. No misunderstanding. I rang the bell. So, Mom opened the door with a wide, beaming smile. There's my girl. At 62, Carol Wilson still looked vibrant. Her silver bob was perfectly styled, and she wore the same warm expression she always had when greeting her daughters. You look beautiful tonight, Heather, but serious. Long week. Something like that, I said, forcing a smile. She pulled me into a hug, completely unaware that I was carrying a folder that would rip her world apart. Inside, Dad was in his usual spot, reclined in his armchair, a glass of red wine in hand. Heather Pinot Noir from Oregon, your favorite. Thanks, Dad, I replied, trying not to let my voice crack. From the kitchen, I heard Amanda's laugh. That same carefree laugh that had always charmed rooms, teachers, bosses, clients. She walked in flawless as ever, wearing a cream silk blouse and slim-cut slacks. Her blonde hair was styled into soft waves, her makeup perfect. Heather, finally, she said, arms wide. I was just telling Mom about this incredible patient success story I heard from Dr. Garner at the club. You should really talk to him. He's looking for new staff, and the benefits are amazing. The audacity. I stared at her, stunned. She was offering me career advice. Thanks, I said coolly, but I'm happy where I am. If she noticed the chill in my tone, she ignored it. Brian's out back, helping Dad with the grill, she added. Mom insisted on lasagna and steaks, so we're going to be swimming in leftovers. Just then, my brother Mark and his wife Jessica arrived with their 2 kids. Everyone greeted each other with hugs and smiles the way families do, when they believe everything's fine. Jessica chatted about Amanda's house, gushing over the sunroom. Heather, you'd love it. All that light perfect for plants. Your sisters turned it into a little oasis. Amanda shot me a quick glance. Just a flicker. Then she smiled. Oh, it's still a work in progress? Contractors. You know how it is. I bit my tongue. That sunroom. That house. Everything she had on paper was mine. Dinner unfolded with unbearable normalcy. Mom served lasagna. Dad carved steak, wine flowed. Mark talked about a new project at work. The kids shared stories from school. Amanda kept the conversation moving expertly, redirecting any questions about finances or the house. Like a magician, misdirecting an audience. Then, as the main course wrapped up, Dad looked across the table. Heather, you've been quiet tonight. Rough week. I set my fork down gently. You could say that. Anything you want to talk about? Mom asked, her brow creasing. Before I could answer, Amanda jumped in with a laugh. Oh, leave her alone, Mom. Not everyone processes things by talking. Some people just need to mull things over privately. I looked at her. Really looked. At the person who had stolen my name, my credit, my financial future. I'd had enough. Actually, I said, locking eyes with her, there is something I need to talk about. With all of you. The room went quiet. Even the kids seemed to sense the shift in energy. Mark, Mom said softly, why don't you take the kids to the living room for a bit? I think they've earned some tablet time. Once they were gone, I reached into my bag, pulled out the manila folder, and placed it on the table. Amanda's eyes locked onto it immediately. Her smile didn't fade, but it tightened just slightly. What's that? Dad asked, setting down his wine glass. This, I said, placing my hand on it, is a police report. More silence. Mom's eyes widened. Brian shifted in his seat. Amanda's smile faltered. A police report, Mom asked. Heather, are you okay? What happened? I took a breath. I'm not okay. I've been the victim of a crime. I looked directly at Amanda. Identity theft and fraud. She froze. Brian reached for her arm. Maybe we should talk about this privately. There's nothing to discuss, I said, voice steady. Amanda, I know. I know it was you. She blinked, her face a blank mask. What are you talking about? Open it, I said, nodding to the folder. She didn't move. Brian looked down at the folder, but didn't reach for it either. So I opened it myself. The first page, the police report, was stamped and signed, detailing my accusation and the evidence. I flipped to the next mortgage documents with my forged signature. Then the IP address traced back to their condo. Credit card statements. Bank transfers. 2 weeks ago, I began. I got a call from the bank. They told me I was 3 months behind on a mortgage for $623,000, a mortgage I never took out, on a home I've never owned. Mom's eyes went wide. "But that's your address," she whispered, looking at Amanda. "It is," I confirmed. "The house you've been showing off to everyone, the one with the sunroom and the Viking appliances, it was bought in my name, with forged documents, and a loan I knew nothing about." Amanda's face had gone pale. "That's ridiculous," she said, voice brittle. "You're confused. This has to be a bank error." "It's not," I said sharply. "The police don't think so. The handwriting expert doesn't think so. And the digital trail leads straight to your condo's IP address. You and Brian planned this. You weren't just borrowing my name. You were planning to declare bankruptcy under it." My father stood, hands trembling. "Amanda, tell me this isn't true." Amanda opened her mouth. No words came out. Brian muttered under his breath. "We should leave." "You're not going anywhere," Dad said, voice sharp. "Not until you explain what the hell is going on." Amanda's expression finally cracked. She looked around the table, at our mother, who was openly crying now, at our father, red-faced and furious, at me, calm, but shaking inside. She let out a breath. "Fine," she said. "You want the truth?" She sat back down and folded her hands. We hit a rough patch. Brian's firm collapsed. My commissions dried up. We were about to lose everything. It wasn't supposed to go this far. We were going to refinance. "Fix it." "That's a lie," I said. "The police found your search history, how to declare bankruptcy in someone else's name. You weren't planning to fix it. You were planning to disappear." My mother sobbed into a napkin. My father stared at Amanda like he didn't recognize her. "You stole from your sister," he said, his voice low and shaking. "You lied to your whole family. You tried to ruin her." Amanda's shoulders slumped. "We were desperate," she said. "You don't understand the pressure. Everyone expects us to be successful." "You all do." "No," I said quietly. "We expected you to be honest." Part 5. The Fallout. The room was silent. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that buzzed with tension thick enough to choke on. My sister's confession hung in the air like smoke after a fire, and no one knew what to say. Until Brian stood up, eyes blazing. "I told you this would blow up in our faces, Amanda. I told you we should have found another way." Amanda snapped her head toward him. "Another way? What way, Brian? You lost everything. Your firm collapsed because you couldn't even manage a client list. You were the one who said this was our best option." "Oh, so now it's my fault," he shot back. "You signed off on everything. You forged your sister's signature. They were unraveling right there in front of us." A married couple who had worked in perfect sync to deceive everyone was now pointing fingers, tearing each other apart at a dinner table covered in half-eaten lasagna and empty wine glasses. My father rose slowly from his chair, face pale and trembling. "Get out," he said, his voice low but steady. "Both of you, get out of my house." "Dad?" Amanda began, tears forming in her eyes. "No," he said, cutting her off. "You stole from your sister. You lied to us. You tried to bury your debt in her name and pretend like nothing happened. I don't even know who you are anymore." My mom sat frozen, one hand over her mouth, mascara streaking her cheeks. "Amanda," she whispered, "how could you do this? After everything we taught you, everything we gave you." Amanda didn't answer. She just stared down at the table. "Because I didn't want to fail," she finally muttered. "Because I couldn't stand the thought of living like Heather." in a one-bedroom apartment with secondhand furniture and no one to come home to. The words hit like a slap, not just because of the cruelty, but because it was so clear she believed it. Amanda looked at my life, one I'd worked hard for, and saw failure. Not independence, not peace, just something beneath her. "That's what you really think of me?" I asked quietly. "That I'm some kind of loser? That my life is so pathetic stealing, it was your only way out? You could have had more, Heather," she said, eyes flashing with bitterness. "You're smart. You've always been smart. But you settled. You used my good credit," I replied, voice hardening, to live a fantasy that wasn't even real. "You wrecked it. You wrecked me." Brian stepped between us, jaw clenched. "Let's go." He pulled Amanda by the arm, and this time she didn't resist. But before they left, my mom finally found her voice. "Will the police arrest you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Amanda turned at the door, and for a moment, the confident mask dropped. The defiance faded. Her eyes shimmered with real fear. "I don't know," she said, and then they were gone. Right? After the door shut, the three of us just sat there in the quiet, stunned. Dad poured himself another glass of wine. His hands were shaking. Mom dabbed her eyes and stared at the folder still open on the table. "I should have seen it," she said finally. "All those fancy purchases. The new house. I knew they couldn't afford it. I just thought they were, I don't know, overextending." "None of us saw it," I said softly. "We didn't want to see it." Mark came in from the living room, where the kids had been watching movies, confusion on his face. "What happened?" he asked. I told him everything. From the mortgage to the credit cards, the forged signature, the police report. His disbelief turned to outrage in seconds. "She did that to you?" he asked, jaw clenched. "Heather, I'll testify. I'll do whatever you need. That's not just wrong. It's evil." I nodded, but I didn't feel victorious. Just exhausted, hollowed out. I left shortly after that. The night air felt cool against my skin, a strange contrast to the heat still pulsing through my chest. I drove home on autopilot, the road blurring beneath my tires. And for the first time since it all began, I let myself fully feel it. Not the anger, not the fear, the grief. Grief for the sister I thought I knew. Grief for the family I once believed was unbreakable. Grief for the girl I used to be before betrayal hardened her into someone who checked her bank account daily and locked up her birth certificate in a safe. So 3 days later, I got the call from Detective Thompson. "Miss Wilson, the district attorney's office has reviewed the case. Arrest warrants have been issued for both Amanda Parker and Brian Parker. They'll be taken into custody today." I closed my eyes. "Okay, thank you." They've been charged with identity theft, mortgage fraud conspiracy, and multiple counts of financial forgery. I'll keep you updated as the case progresses. That evening, it made the local news. Prominent Seattle realtor and financial advisor arrested for identity theft scheme. Victim: the sister. They didn't use my name, but everyone who knew us knew exactly who they meant. My phone exploded. Friends, distant relatives, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted to know how I was, what happened, if Amanda really did it. I turned my phone off. I couldn't deal with it. My parents stopped going out. My mom took a leave from her teaching job. Dad quit his weekly golf meetups. Their social circle neighbors, church friends, former co-workers became a minefield of whispers and awkward stares. "Everyone must be talking about us," Mom said during one of our rare conversations. "Wondering what we did wrong." "You didn't do anything wrong," I said, but even I wasn't sure I believed that anymore. Had Amanda always been like this? Had we ignored the signs? Or had she truly changed? Son. Then came the guilt. Not from me, but from them. Subtle at first, then louder. "She's still your sister," Mom said one night over the phone. "She made a terrible mistake, But she has 2 young kids. They need their mother. I know, I said, but I need to survive too. She stole everything from me. What if the DA offered a deal? She asked. Probation, no jail time. I clenched the phone tighter. She planned to declare bankruptcy in my name, Mom. She was ready to ruin me and walk away. That's not a mistake. That's a plan. She's sorry. She's sorry she got caught. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. So, Stephanie, as always, reminded me of the truth. You are not responsible for the consequences of Amanda's crimes, she said one night, as we sat at a bar, her drink clinking softly against the counter. You didn't put her in this position. She did. She's not a child. She made her choices. But what about Harper and Ethan? I whispered, choking back tears. What happens to them? She should have thought about them before she committed fraud, Stephanie said gently but firmly. You don't have to sacrifice your future to spare hers. She was right. And the next week, when I met with the district attorney, I told them exactly that. I wasn't backing down. Part 6. The Trial of Truth. The legal process moved forward, but it wasn't like what you see on TV. No quick courtroom scenes with dramatic music. No gavel-slamming verdicts in 30 minutes. It was months of waiting, of depositions and documents, of sitting in sterile conference rooms with prosecutors and being asked the same questions over and over. Each time, I relived it, every forged signature, every charge on credit cards I'd never used. Every sleepless night, I felt a little more numb. The trial date loomed like a shadow over everything. Amanda and Brian pled not guilty at first. Their lawyers filed motions, tried to suppress evidence, delayed proceedings. The legal fees alone must have been astronomical. Not that they were paying them out of pocket. Their frozen assets were being used for their defense. Meanwhile, I was the one juggling work court prep and credit repair calls. I was the one whose credit had been destroyed, who was flagged on background checks, who was constantly explaining to strangers why I wasn't the fraud. I remember sitting on my lunch break at the hospital one day, staring at my phone and wondering, is this what justice feels like? Because it didn't feel victorious. It felt exhausting. Then, 9 months after that family dinner, everything changed. Amanda and Brian agreed to a plea deal. The DA called me personally. They're pleading guilty to 1 count of identity theft, 1 count of fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy. In exchange, we're dropping the lesser charges. Do you want to attend sentencing? Yes, I said immediately. I didn't need closure. I needed to see her face when she couldn't lie anymore. The courtroom was cold and quiet. Amanda sat at the defense table, wearing a plain navy suit, her hair pulled back. She looked smaller somehow. Not frail, but diminished. Like she'd finally realized that curated Instagram posts and designer labels couldn't save her here. Brian sat next to her, expression unreadable. I sat in the gallery, with the prosecutor, my friend Stephanie, beside me, her hand gently resting on my knee. My parents were there too, seated on the opposite side. Mom looked like she hadn't slept. Dad was stoic, but I could see the tension in his jaw. The judge entered, and we all stood. Amanda Parker, you have pled guilty to 1 count of identity theft, 1 count of fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy. The judge began. Before I pronounce sentence, do you wish to make a statement? Amanda stood slowly. She didn't look at the judge. She looked at me. I want to apologize to my sister, she said, her voice low but steady. What I did was unforgivable. I betrayed her trust in the worst possible way, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I was selfish. I was terrified of failure, but that's no excuse for what I did. Heather, I'm so sorry. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just let her words wash over me, trying to find meaning in them. Did I believe her? I didn't know. But I heard her. The judge nodded and began reading the sentence. Amanda Parker, you are hereby sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. You will also serve 3 years of supervised release and are required to pay full restitution to the victim. Brian was sentenced to 12 months. He barely flinched. Amanda's lips trembled, but she didn't cry. As they were led away, our eyes met one final time. There was no hatred in mine, no revenge, just loss. The kind that doesn't fade when the handcuffs click. In the weeks that followed, life didn't return to normal. Not really. But things started to move forward. The house on Highland Drive went into foreclosure. The bank sold it at auction for less than what Amanda owed. The loss was absorbed into their restitution plan, which meant eventually I would see some repayment. Though the full amount? Probably never. I worked with financial advisors and credit specialists to clean up my record. Every fraudulent account required paperwork, affidavits, police reports. Some banks were cooperative, others not so much. One woman on a customer service line actually said, "Well, maybe you just forgot. You applied for this card." I nearly screamed. It took months, but slowly, piece by piece, my financial life started to recover. The hardest part wasn't the money. It was my family. Holidays became awkward limbo zones. My parents still visited Amanda in prison. They rarely talked about it, and when they did, it was always in soft, cautious tones. "She's teaching ESL to other inmates," Mom said one night over dinner, trying to smile. "Says it gives her purpose." "That's good," I said, not knowing what else to say. "She asks about you," she added gently. "She's written you letters." I nodded. I hadn't responded to any of them. I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. Then one day, a letter arrived that was different. The handwriting was Amanda's, but the tone was changed. "I've been working with a therapist here," she wrote. "She says that accountability isn't just saying you're sorry. It's understanding exactly what you did. I stole more than your identity, Heather. I stole your peace, your security, your trust. I know I can't undo it. I just want you to know. I see it now. Truly. And I'm sorry." I didn't respond. But I didn't throw it away either. I kept it in a drawer, rereading it occasionally, when I felt like maybe something inside her had finally cracked open. Around that same time, the first restitution check arrived. Not much, just a few $100s. But it was something. I took it and did something symbolic. I put down a deposit on a small house. Not in Queen Anne, not with Viking appliances, but it was mine, fully mine. The day I signed the loan papers, my real name, my real income, my real approval. I sat in the loan officer's office, tears welling up in my eyes. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said, smiling. "Better than okay." Because this time, nobody stole my name to get here. I had earned it, for real. Part 7. Building from the ruins. My new home wasn't flashy. It didn't have a sunroom, or city views, or anything that would appear in a luxury real estate listing. But it had something far more important to me now: security, integrity, the quiet dignity of something built honestly. It was a small craftsman-style house on the edge of North Seattle with a modest backyard and just enough space for a vegetable garden. The first thing I did was buy a locking file cabinet. The second, I planted lavender by the porch. It was the smell of calm, and I needed a lot of that. Stephanie showed up on moving day with takeout champagne and a doormat that read, "Not today, identity thieves." I laughed harder than I had in months. Later that night, we sat on the porch, drinking bubbly from mismatched coffee mugs, watching the sun set through the trees. "You made it," she said. "You really did." "I'm still making it," I replied. "But yeah, this feels good." It wasn't a triumphant kind of good. It was quieter, more grounded. A kind of peace that came after surviving a hurricane and standing among the wreckage with your feet still planted. My parents visited the following weekend, bringing housewarming gifts, a potted plant, and a set of kitchen towels with little embroidered pears. Mom walked through the house, slowly touching the counters, admiring the garden. "It's lovely, Heather," she said, her voice thick. "Just lovely." "We're proud of you," Dad added, and for once there was no tension in his voice, just quiet sincerity. "Thanks," I said. "That means a lot." There was still a distance between us, like a crack down the center of a vase that had been glued back together. But they were trying, and I appreciated that, even if we didn't talk much about Amanda. Amanda's letters continued to arrive every few weeks. Some were short, some several pages. She always addressed me as "Dear Heather Never," "Hey Sis," or "My Sweet Sister," like she used to. There was no pretending anymore. Her tone had shifted from performative apologies to what felt like real reflection. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote in one, "but I hope someday you'll believe I mean it when I say I'm sorry." I still didn't write back, but I kept them. Some part of me needed proof that maybe in her own way, she was trying to put something back together too. Set. Around that time, something unexpected happened. I started connecting with other people who had been through similar experiences. It began with a support group I joined on a whim, Financial Crime Survivors Network. I found it online during one of my late-night spirals when I couldn't sleep and was Googling phrases like how to trust again after identity theft. At first, I just listened. Stories poured in: siblings, parents, best friends, people who had been betrayed, not by strangers, but by those closest to them. Some had lost homes. Others lost marriages. All of them had lost something they didn't know how to name. It was the first time I didn't feel like I had to explain or defend my pain. They already knew. Eventually, I started speaking up, sharing my story, offering advice, helping newcomers navigate credit repair processes, report fraud, or just talk through the emotional wreckage. "You have a gift for this, Margot," the group director told me after a session one night. "You're honest, but kind. You don't sugarcoat anything, but you give people hope." I hadn't planned for this part. I never thought identity theft would become something I talked about publicly. But the truth was, sharing helped. Not just them, me too. At one session, a woman named Rachel, no relation to the detective, shared her story. Her younger brother had used her identity to start a business that failed. He left her with 6 figures in debt and vanished. "He always said he'd pay me back," she said bitterly. "He never even apologized. When the meeting ended, she approached me. 'You actually got a letter that acknowledged everything. I think I would frame that.' I haven't framed it," I smiled softly. "But yeah, I kept it. Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" I paused. "I think forgiveness is complicated," I said. "You don't owe it to someone just because they ask for it. It doesn't erase what they did, and it doesn't mean letting them back into your life. Sometimes, forgiveness is just letting go of the weight they left behind." Rachel nodded. "That's the most honest answer I've ever heard." We sat in silence for a moment, both of us feeling the echoes of things we couldn't change. As I settled into my new life, I learned that healing wasn't a straight path. Some days I felt strong, empowered. Other days, I'd see a random email or a bill addressed to Ms. Heather Parker, a glitch in some database, and it would knock the breath out of me. But I kept going. I checked my credit every month. I changed passwords regularly. I became someone who read the fine print. I also became someone who valued her peace more than her pride. I declined invites I didn't want to attend. I didn't feel the need to explain myself to everyone anymore. I built something stable, brick by emotional brick. And then one day, a pink envelope arrived in the mail. The handwriting was messy, almost childlike. Inside was a note written in thick crayon. "Dear Aunt Heather, I miss you a lot. Grandma says you're mad at Mommy because she did something bad. I'm sometimes mad at Mommy too, like when she won't let me have 2 desserts. But I still love her. Do you still love her? Can you come see me and Ethan? We have a new apartment now. It's small. It doesn't have a garden like the big house. Love, Harper. I sat on my front porch and cried, not because of the crime, not because of the betrayal, but because an innocent 7-year-old still loved her mother and missed her aunt and wanted something to be whole again. Maybe it never could be, but maybe, just maybe, something new could grow in the space where everything else had broken. Part 8. The Children and the Cost. The letter from Harper stayed on my kitchen counter for 2 days. Every time I passed it, I paused. Read it again. Folded and unfolded it. That crayon-scrawled question, do you still love her, cut deeper than any courtroom statement ever could, because the answer wasn't simple. Yes, I still loved my sister. And no, I didn't trust her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But Harper and Ethan, they were innocent. They didn't choose this. They didn't forge documents or make secret plans to declare bankruptcy in someone else's name. They were just kids caught in the wreckage of 2 adults who had made devastating choices. I picked up the phone and called my mom. "Hi, sweetheart," she answered, her voice hopeful, cautious. "Is it true you're watching the kids while Amanda's inside?" She hesitated. "Yes. We've had them since the sentencing. Brian's parents didn't want custody, and well, we couldn't let them go into the system." I nodded slowly. "Do they ask about me?" "All the time," she said, almost a whisper, "especially Harper." "Can I come see them?" There was a pause. Then, soft but sure, "Yes, of course." That weekend, I pulled into my parents' driveway with a nervous stomach. The same driveway where Amanda's Range Rover had once sat like a symbol of success. The same driveway where she'd hugged me and told me to aim higher. But today, it was just me. I knocked, and when the door opened, Harper came flying out like a cannonball. "Aunt Heather." I barely had time to brace before she threw her arms around me, knocking the wind out of my chest in the best way possible. Ethan was slower, more reserved, hanging back, until I knelt down and opened my arms. Then he was there too, hugging me tightly. They smelled like graham crackers and sunscreen. Like kids. Like life that keeps going, even when everything falls apart. Inside, Mom had baked cookies and put out Harper's favorite coloring books. We didn't talk about Amanda right away. We talked about school cartoons, soccer practice. I asked them about their new apartment and what kind of toys they liked best. And when Harper finally asked, "Are you mad at Mommy?" I took a long breath. "I'm hurt," I said honestly. "But I still love her. And I love you and your brother very, very much. Will you come back again?" "I will," I promised. And I meant it. That visit didn't erase what Amanda had done, but it reminded me that healing isn't just about the person who hurt you. It's about the people who still need you after. In the months that followed, I kept visiting the kids. I helped Harper with her reading, brought Ethan a build-your-own robot kit. Slowly, carefully, I became part of their routine again. Not every day. Not the same as before. But something real. My parents too were trying. They didn't excuse Amanda's actions anymore, not the way they had in the beginning. But they didn't demonize her either. She calls every week. Mom told me once, over tea. Mostly to ask about the kids. Sometimes to ask about you. What do you say? I tell her you're doing well, that you bought a house, that you're healing. I nodded, unsure how to feel about that. She asked if you'd ever write her back. Mom added gently. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe, when I'm ready." That fall, I spoke at a financial literacy seminar hosted by the nonprofit I had started volunteering with. The theme was protecting yourself from the ones you love. I shared my story, not just the facts, but the emotions, the guilt, the pressure, the invisible weight of being told to forgive just because it's family. Afterward, a woman approached me in tears. "My son used my social security number to buy a car, she said. I was too ashamed to report it. I didn't want to ruin his future. I get it, I said. But you have to protect your own future too. That's not selfish. That's survival. We hugged two strangers connected by something neither of us ever asked for. Say, by the end of that year, my credit score had climbed back into the good range. Not where it once was, but miles better than where Amanda had left it. The banks had finally removed most of the fraudulent accounts. My name was clean again. One day, I sat on my back porch with a cup of tea and looked out at my garden. The lavender had spread. The tomatoes were thriving. My house, my life, my choices, everything felt like mine again. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I wrote Amanda a letter. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a reply. Amanda, I received your letters, all of them. I've read them, I've cried over them, and I've kept them. You hurt me in ways I still don't fully understand. You didn't just steal my identity. You made me question my sense of safety, my worth, and even my past. But I see that you're trying. I'm not ready to see you. But I wanted you to know I'm okay. I bought a house. I filled it with plants. The kids are doing well. Maybe one day we'll sit down and talk. Until then, I hope you keep working on yourself, Heather. I didn't know what she'd feel when she read it, but I knew what I felt when I sealed the envelope. Lighter, not fixed, not healed, but lighter. Part 9. Redefining Family. The letter I sent Amanda didn't come with expectations. I wasn't waiting by the mailbox or refreshing my inbox. I didn't send it as a signal that I wanted to rebuild what we had. I sent it because I needed to say it for myself. A few weeks later, I received a reply. A short one. Thank you for writing me. I didn't expect it. I cried when I read it. Not because I thought we were okay again, but because I realized how much I had broken. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I hope one day I might earn back even a little piece of your respect. Take care of yourself. Amanda. I folded the note and slipped it into the drawer where I kept the others. I didn't know if that drawer would ever be empty or if the letters would stop coming, but I didn't mind anymore. They no longer felt like a burden, just pages in a story that was still being written. Thanksgiving that year was different. The first in my life where the entire family didn't gather under one roof. My parents hosted something small, with just my brother Mark, his wife Jessica, the kids and me. No Amanda, no Brian. There was a hollow space where she used to sit at the table. No one said it out loud, but we all felt it. And yet, there was laughter, there was warmth. It wasn't the same, but it wasn't broken beyond repair either. Mark poured me a glass of wine at the end of the evening and leaned in. I want you to know. He said what you did. Reporting her sticking to your guns. It was brave. And you weren't just protecting yourself. You were protecting all of us from a lie. Thanks, I said, trying not to tear up. Sometimes I still wonder if I did the right thing. You did, he said without hesitation. And the fact that you wonder, that just proves it. Oh. By Christmas, my parents invited me again. Amanda obviously wasn't there, but the kids were. They lit up when I walked in, dragging me toward the tree, proudly showing off their handmade ornaments. My mom had labeled all the gifts from Grandma and Grandpa this year. No mention of Mom or Dad. No mention of Amanda. It was subtle, but I noticed. They were adjusting too. After dinner, I sat with Dad on the back patio, wrapped in jackets against the chill. She calls us every Sunday, he said after a long silence. I figured, she's trying. She says the prison library is small, but she's read more books than she has in years. I smiled faintly. That sounds like her. always looking for the next thing to conquer. She asked us not to visit for a while, he added. That surprised me. Really? She said she needed time to work through some things without leaning on us too much. Said she's been codependent her whole life, that she's finally facing herself. That's big. He nodded. I think maybe she's starting to understand the damage she caused. I let that sit in the cold night air. Do you think you'll ever forgive her? He asked softly. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm not angry every day anymore. That's a start. It. Around New Year's, I got an email from Margot, the director of the nonprofit where I volunteered, subject speaking opportunity. She wanted me to speak at a national conference for financial fraud victims, specifically on the topic of family-based identity theft. At first, I hesitated. My story felt so personal, so raw. Did I want to stand on a stage and bear it all? But then I remembered the people I'd met in support groups. The woman whose son had bought a car using her credit. The man whose mother had taken out student loans in his name when he was 12. All of them carrying their own versions of my story. And I thought maybe if I tell mine, someone out there will feel a little less alone. So I said yes. The conference was in Chicago. I stood in a room full of survivors, law enforcement, financial institutions, and advocates. I told them everything from the phone call from the bank to the confrontation at my parents' dinner table, from the court hearings to Harper's crayon letter that cracked my heart wide open. I ended with this. Family betrayal doesn't just take your money or your credit. It takes your sense of safety, your belief that your last name is supposed to protect you. But here's what I've learned. Protecting yourself isn't betrayal. It's self-respect. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing peace over punishment. And recovery isn't a finish line. It's a daily decision to keep going, even when the people you loved most tried to break you. The room stood. People clapped. Some cried. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt powerful. Not because Amanda was behind bars, but because I had rebuilt something she couldn't touch, myself. A few weeks later, Amanda wrote me again. I heard you spoke at a conference. That's amazing. I can't say I'm proud because I don't have the right to say that right now, but I admire you. I'm working on my own talk for our prison's reentry program. I'm trying to help others see where choices can lead. Maybe in a weird way, you're still showing me how to be better. I didn't reply, but I smiled. She was right. Even from miles away, even behind bars, I was finally showing her what strength looked like. Part 10. The final chapter and what comes after. 6 months after Amanda began her sentence, the foreclosure sign was finally removed from in front of the Highland Drive house. I hadn't driven by in a long time, but that day I took a detour after work, just to see. The windows were open. A new family was moving in, boxes on the lawn, a little girl riding a scooter up and down the driveway. They had no idea what had happened inside those walls. No idea that on paper that house had once belonged to me. And I felt nothing, not anger, not longing, just release. The house wasn't a wound anymore. It was just a structure. 4 walls and a roof. The real damage had never been the property, it had been what it symbolized. The lie, the betrayal, but I had let it go. Because I had something better now. My own place, my own garden, my own peace. Then, Amanda was scheduled for early release after serving 14 months with good behavior. I knew the date. I'd marked it on my calendar even though I hadn't planned to do anything about it. But as the day approached, I found myself thinking less about what she did and more about what came next. What comes after betrayal? What comes after accountability? What comes after everything you thought you knew about family is burned down? I didn't know, but I wanted to find out. The day before her release, I wrote her one final letter. Amanda, You're getting out tomorrow. I imagine it must feel overwhelming and scary and maybe even exciting. I won't be there. I'm not ready for that. But I wanted you to know that I wish you the courage to rebuild. Not what you had before, but something better, something real. I'm still healing, still hurting sometimes, still figuring out how to carry both love and boundaries in the same heart. But I'm open to seeing who you become next. Not the sister I used to look up to, not the woman who betrayed me, just you, whoever that is now. Take care, Heather. I mailed it and didn't wait for a reply. Because the truth is, some chapters end quietly, without a hug, without a photo, without a clean resolution. But they end all the same. Now, over a year since the phone call that shattered my world, I'm here. Still standing, still growing. I drink my coffee on a porch I paid for with my own name. I volunteer at the nonprofit every Thursday. I still work at Seattle Grace, and I'm up for a supervisory role next quarter. And my credit, it's back in the 700s. The same number Amanda used to steal the life she thought she deserved. Turns out I deserved it more because I earned it, every ounce of it. People ask me, sometimes have you forgiven her? The honest answer, I don't know. Forgiveness is slippery. It's not one grand act. It's a series of choices, again and again, to not let bitterness rot you from the inside. Some days I can wish her peace. Other days I still feel the sting of what she did. But what I've realized is this: forgiveness and protection are not opposites. You can hope someone grows while never handing them your trust again. You can miss the sister you had and never want the one who betrayed you back in your life. Family is complicated, and that's okay, because I've made peace with the messiness. I've made peace with myself, and that's enough. So, if you're watching this and you've been through something similar, betrayed by someone you trusted, hurt by the very people who were supposed to protect you, I want you to hear this. You're not alone, and you're not weak for walking away. You're not selfish for demanding justice. You're not wrong for drawing a line in the sand and saying this is where it ends. Healing is a winding road, but it's worth every step, because on the other side of that pain is something stronger than forgiveness. It's freedom. Thanks for listening to my story. If any part of this helped you, if it made you feel seen or a little less alone, please like and subscribe. And share this with someone who might be struggling to reclaim their life after betrayal. And let me know in the comments, what did betrayal teach you about yourself? What boundaries have you set? What did you learn when you finally stopped protecting the people who hurt you? Until next time, stay safe. Trust carefully, and remember, protecting yourself isn't betrayal. It's survival, and it's brave.